Shaping and curling ostrich feathers is the best way to transform them from drab to fab. But just like with every other technique, there seems to be so many ways to accomplish these tasks. And it can be really frustrating to have to steal valuable time from working on your project to testing out these methods to find out what works best for you. I mean, all we really want is a spectacular display of feathers to adorn our hat at our next event without having to spend more time than necessary to do it. So today, I am going to be testing several methods for shaping and curling feathers using simple household items so that you don't have to. The first thing you want to do is shape the entire feather. Because if you shape the barbs first, you'll end up messing up the curls when you shape the feather shaft, especially if you're using steam, because we all know how that goes. And of course, there are several ways to do this. So the first and simplest way is to just use your hands. All you're gonna do is curl your feather in the direction of your choice with your fingers. Now I'm using just a little bit of pressure here between my index and thumb as I work the shaft between my fingers to get it to curl. So I'm being careful not to crease it or bend it. I just want to curl it. Okay, whoa, hold up. Okay, Pastelina, you're gonna confuse everyone because you left out a really big detail. I'm always having to clean up her mistakes, always. So sitting here editing and I realized that she left out a big detail. And that detail is the whole reason why this video exists. I did a video previously where I took some feathers from Amazon and I made them into two different looks. Unfortunately, I left out an entire section of how I shaped and curled the feathers. So that's why I'm doing this video in the first place. But it felt weird to just have that footage without anything else. It just felt disjointed and it didn't make sense. And I didn't feel like it would be a valuable piece of information for you. So what I decided to do is experiment and play around with some of the other methods that I had seen and heard of in the past. And some of them I've used in the past. You are going to see footage from two different things. I just wanted to clear that up. In this first look from that video, I shaped the feathers using the finger shaping method. I'm kind of just curling it around my finger. And you know, you can play with it to give it more curl or less curl. And for the shape that we're going for, I want most of the curl to be towards the end. I want it to kind of droop back down on itself a little bit. I want to keep this end fairly straight. All right, and then we just repeat that. You may find it useful to use a tool for some of the more thick and stubborn feathers. Here I am using a pair of scissors, but really you could use any implement with a thin flat edge. A curling iron is also a wonderful implement to use for curling your feathers. Here I'm using a 1.5-inch barrel curling iron. Just wrap the shaft around it and hold it against the heat for about 30 seconds. It is, of course, possible to combine methods. So here I've started out by curling the shaft of the feather using the curling iron. Then I'm going to go in with my fingers and I'm going to start curving it sideways. It's best to do the curving sideways with your fingers because if you use the curling iron, it does tend to crush the barbs. For the second look, I shaped them using steam, and I'll show you that now. So this is the shape that we ended up with. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's an interesting shape. That'll look nice on a hat. Now, all of these methods worked quite well. From experience, I can say that working with your fingers works best with some of the smaller feathers that don't have as thick of a shaft, but it's also really great when you're wanting to shape things to the side or using the edge of your scissors. Also works quite well. The only thing with that is that it does tend to crease your shaft. So that is something to take in consideration. And you probably can cover it up with other feathers depending on what your design is. Now, between the fingers and the scissors, I would probably choose the fingers because they're the easiest to access at all times. As for the iron, I really like more complex shapes I was able to achieve. Now, in the past, I've only really used my fingers or scissors or some other sort of implement. I hadn't really used an iron at all. So I was really impressed what I could accomplish with steam and heat. I mean, go figure. You do have to be careful because I found that if I use too much heat or too much steam, it did tend to poof the feather a bit. So it got a little frizzy, but it really does add some great opportunities for some different shapes. So got to give that one a big thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. The first method for curling your feathers is done similar to curling ribbon. You can use scissors, plastic utensils, a dull knife, or a sharp knife, really any implement with a thin, flat edge. And this was the method I used to curl the feathers for look 1 in the previous video. To do this, you're going to place the feather barbs between the implement and your fingers, and you're starting at the base, and as you pull away, the tool moves across the barbs and causes them to curl. With each pass, the barbs can curl more, and the more curl you give the feather, the narrower it will look. You do want to be gentle as you do this and just use the lightest pressure you can and still get results because it's so delicate and it's easy to tear or cut the barb from the feather. So in the video, I used this replica 16th century eating knife. So then I decided to try some of the other tools to see how they compared. I tried some scissors, the back of a plastic knife, and the side of a plastic spoon, as well as a calligraphy pen knife that I use for cutting quills. So the scissors were the absolute worst. You know, I've seen them used 2 ways. I've seen them used open and closed. When they were open, it was awkward and I was afraid I was going to cut myself. And then I ended up tearing the feather. So really, I would not recommend using it unless you've been using it and you're comfortable with it. I wouldn't bother trying. Now, I love using scissors like that for curling ribbon. Feathers, not so much. As for the butter knife and plastic utensils, they were better than the scissors, and they're definitely safer than any of these methods, so there's that. But I did find that I had to add a little more pressure to get it to curl at all, and I had to keep going over each section several times, and that was really trying my patience. So I found I would tend to rush more, then I would end up either tearing off a feather or breaking off a feather, a barb. So not for me. I really didn't like it. But if you're looking for something that is safe to do and you have some patience, this is a great method for you. Now, I really liked my calligraphy knife, but the problem is that it's so small that I felt like I didn't have enough surface area and then it just went slower. It worked great. It just was a slower process than the eating knife. Now, the eating knife was definitely my favorite method. I've used it before and I have found that it just works fantastic for me. I had just recently started using my knife, and even after trying all of these, I have to say that this knife is my favorite. I really do think it has something to do with the fact that it is sharp and it is thin. I don't have to put any pressure on the barb at all. I find that I have less breakage when I'm using the sharper, thinner tool. 10 out of 10 for that one. So the other thing you can use is like curling irons or straightening irons. Let's try that next. In the previous video, I did use the curling iron for one of the feather looks. And since that's been done for a little bit, I can tell you that I did find that does not seem to hold the curl. I like the way that the curling iron looks. It's a different look from the other curling methods. I just wish that it actually stayed longer than it did. I was using a 5/8 barrel, so maybe a thinner barrel would do well. Unfortunately, I don't have a thinner barrel, and I was like looking around and I went to a couple stores. I didn't see any. I could order one, but that would take time to get here. I'm trying to get this out for this weekend. I do have this Marcel curling iron. I got it at a thrift store for like $1. I've never used it though, and I don't have a way to heat it up. Hairdressers today have a special oven. I don't have one. I was thinking I could use a hot plate, but I don't have a hot plate. And I don't really want to do it on my stove because I have a gas stove, so I don't want to blacken it. I have this little pancake little iron thing, so it fits pretty good inside of here. See that? It's about the right size so that it's touching the heating implement. I know it's weird. It's weird. You know what we do around here is we make do. We solve problems and we make do. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to try this out and see how it works. So yeah, the Marcel curling iron, I think worked pretty good. It did seem to hold better than the other curling irons. So yeah, I like the curling iron. It does give it a different type of curl, which I like. I like variety. The only issue I have is that the curls seem to fall out really quickly. Now, I've seen a lot of people use curling irons, so if you have used a curling iron, tell me in the comments. Have you had any experience with finding a way to keep the curls in the feather and not from falling out? And I don't know what it is with the straightening iron. I can't curl my hair with the straightening iron either. So I think that it's probably a me issue and not a tool issue. I have seen people use straightening irons and I have seen it work. I just couldn't get it to work. So there you have it. Now, if your feathers are really sad, you may want to sew a couple together before you curl and shape them. And this video shows you exactly how to do that.
I'm a kitty cat.